I never imagined that my brave rescue of a baby would lead to a heartbreaking reunion. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The wind howled, a storm brewing. Flashes of lightning danced above me. I was frozen in place, heart racing, gripping the rusted fence that framed the park. The world around me blurred, but one sound pierced through the wail of a baby. I rushed toward the noise. Every step felt heavy, anxiety coiling in my gut. And then I saw her. A tiny bundle, soaked and trembling, lying alone in the mud beneath an ancient oak tree. My instincts kicked in. I pushed through the cold, sticky ground, scooping her up. She was so powerless, so fragile. I could barely breathe as I cradled her close, feeling her warmth seep into my chill. The crowd had gathered, a collection of wide eyes and hushed whispers. I could feel their gaze heavy and scrutinizing. Who would leave a baby like this? The thought wrapped around my chest, squeezing harder with each passing moment. As I glanced around, I caught glimpses of barely contained panic on their faces. Were they scared? Or just shocked? I sprinted back into the depths of the town, heartbeat thudding in my ears. My little sister's face flashed before my eyes. Be brave, she always told me. But it was hard to feel brave in that moment, clutching that baby. Eventually, I reached the safety of the hospital. The sterile smell hit me like a slap. Nurses rushed around, voices loud, but I just stood there, trembling. A doctor took the baby from me, gentle but swift. Is she okay? I swallowed hard, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks, tears threatening to spill. Silence filled the air. My mind raced, but still, I felt a glimmer of hope. Days passed, and I was haunted by questions. Who was this little girl? Where was her mother? I felt an odd connection to her, a pull that tethered my heart in unexpected ways. My family was concerned, but I couldn't let go. I had to find out more. And then, just when I thought I was making sense of it all, a shadow loomed over my days, a truth waiting to unravel. I opened a letter one morning, the words blurring as I read, "We are searching for our lost daughter. She is a part of something much greater than herself." My breath caught. My chest tightened once more. How did they know? I stared at the letter, the room spinning. Everything I thought I knew was crashing down. What if this baby was not just a lost soul, but a piece of a puzzle I was never meant to solve? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch toward me as I stood outside the hospital. The warm glow of the fading light felt almost mocking against the storm of uncertainty swirling in my chest. Clutching that letter, I could feel the weight of its implications crushing me. Fragments of a puzzle I'd never sought to understand were breaking apart in my mind. I had spent countless nights lying wide awake, rehearsing how to answer the baby's cries, even imagining comforting her as I sang the lullabies my sister and I used to share. It was in those moments of imagined peace that I found solace, the connection between us feeling almost ethereal. And now, to be thrust into this reality, one where I had become an unwitting part of someone else's family drama, left me spinning. As I turned to leave, lost in thought, a soft voice broke through my reverie. "Excuse me, are you looking for someone?" A woman stepped closer, her eyes filled with concern. I recognized her from the crowd earlier. The way she had clutched her own child, a small boy with curly hair, suggested a kindred spirit. The baby. "I found her," I said hoarsely, still clutching the letter. "And now, I don't understand what's happening." "Someone is searching for her." The woman stepped forward, pulling a small teddy bear from her bag and handing it to me. "I can't pretend to know what you're going through, but I think you're being very brave. It's a good thing that baby was rescued. No matter what happens next, you should know your heart is in the right place." Her kindness washed over me, a gentle balm amidst the chaos. I took the bear, its fabric warm from her bag and oddly comforting. "Thank you," I murmured, trying to mask the tremor in my voice. Her boy, noticing the moment, reached out towards me. "I want to help her too." "Can I hold her?" I nodded, unable to speak as I thought of the baby and the emotional storm ahead. Was this little boy a reminder that amidst despair, there remained innocence? I could almost see my little sister in him, encouraging me to embrace this moment of connection and hope, but as the days wore on, the shadows crept back. I started using the hospital's resources to search for the baby's parents, scouring local news, online forums, and social media. With each passing hour, doubts gnawed at me. Was it right to interfere in this little girl's life? Who was I to question the love of her actual parents? Despite my instincts urging me to protect her, what if my actions only muddled her future? One afternoon, while scrolling through a parenting forum, a post caught my eye. "Searching for a lost baby, please help." Desperation hung in the air of the words, echoing my own fear. "We lost our daughter, but we believe she's safe. If anyone has seen a baby girl with a birthmark on her left ankle, we need you." My heartbeat quickened. The description was eerily familiar. I remembered my careful examination of her tiny frame as I cradled her. I knelt by my phone, trembling fingers typing a response. Before I hit send, the weight of my emotions poured over me. I had to know. But the truth terrified me. Suddenly, the hospital doors burst open and a frantic man rushed inside, his face pale and drawn. The energy in the air shifted as his eyes scanned the waiting area, wild with worry. I felt adrenaline surge through me, quickly glancing back at the baby, safety still my priority. As he approached, I almost wanted to hide her, as if somehow shielding her would grant me an illusion of control over this crumbling reality. "That I am looking for my daughter," he declared, the desperation in his voice palpable. My breath stalled in my throat. Who is she?" I stammered, the pieces of the puzzle converging but the picture remaining frustratingly incomplete. That he met my gaze, fear morphing into something deeper, a blend of pain and recognition. "Her name is Lily, and I can feel it in my bones. Someone has her." Reality hit like a freight train. My world, once filled with hope and determination, began to unravel. I looked at him, the man who was likely her father, and the letter burned heavily in my pocket. He had searched for her. Would I have to hand over the baby? Were her ties to him stronger than the bond one felt forming between us? What if I hesitated, the words catching? What if I found her first? His eyes narrowed, confusion mingling with desperation. "What do you mean? I found a baby in the park. She needs help," I said, feeling tears well up, unable to hold back the emotions flooding my heart. In that instant, I understood that no matter what connections I had felt with this little girl, her story was bound to the man before me. And yet, in the midst of this turmoil, I realized I might have to confront the hardest truth: love does not always equate to possession. As the air thickened with tension, the walls felt like they were closing in. The past pulled at me, the present faltered, and the future glimmered with uncertainty. What would I say when he found out she was safe? What would become of that bond? And could I truly let her go? That question hung in the air between us, heavy and unresolved, lingering like the storm on the horizon. As the man's breaths turned ragged, the tremors in my hands intensified, the letter in my pocket suddenly feeling like a lead weight. My heart raced in sync with the chaotic thoughts swirling in my mind. What was the right decision? The little girl whom I had protected with every fiber of my being suddenly felt vulnerable in this charged moment. The image of her soft face flashed in my mind, her tiny fingers grasping mine, and I faltered, torn between my instinct to shield her and the undeniable pull of her true family. The man took a step closer, his desperation palpable. "I need to see her, please. If you found her, you have to understand it's been months. We thought we lost her." His voice trembled, cracking under the weight of his conviction. Those lost months lingered in the air like an unfinished symphony, chaotic yet somber. I felt a wave wash over me as a surge of empathy crashed through my defenses. This father, barely holding it together, embodied the echo of a love that transcended time and distance. Yet my heart still ached with the vision of the child who had stolen a piece of my soul. I don't know how it all works, I whispered, my words barely escaping the lump in my throat. I found her alone. She was scared. He absorbed my words, his haunted expression softening momentarily with a flicker of hope, though uncertainty remained etched into every line of his face. Can I just see her? Please, that I need to know she's safe, I found myself replying, more to the child than to him, my instinctive mothering rising up and challenging the propriety of this reunion. The walls felt as high as they'd ever been, but I steadied myself, leaning into the warmth of shared humanity. With a hesitant nod, I glanced around for a nurse, needing guidance and perhaps a lifeline. As we waited, the weight of the moment thickened, silence stretching as tangible as the words left unspoken. I could see his hope warring with the shadow of despair simmering just below the surface. How did she end up there? He asked, eyes glistening. Where was she? Don't know. I just found her. I took her to safety when I could have just walked away. My voice was barely above a murmur, but it hung heavy in the air. Thank you. Thank you, he uttered, each word wrapping around me like a fragile thread, binding us together in this unthinkable moment. Whispers of forgiveness danced through my heart, seeking solace in a situation rife with confusion. Then, in the midst of our fragile truce, another presence entered the space, an older woman, her face etched with concern but softened by kindness. What's going on here? She asked, her maternal instincts clearly palpable. As I turned to explain, the child's cries filled the air, summoning all of my attention. A nurse emerged from a side door, holding the little girl snugly swaddled in a warm blanket. Relief rushed through me, and I barely had time to prepare myself for the reality of what this meeting was about to mean. She approached, extending the precious bundle toward us. Every instinct urged me to reach out and cradle her close one more time, but I felt the weight of the father's watchful gaze upon me, his breath hitching as the moment drew near. I hesitated, the cacophony of emotions swirling inside me screaming for answers, for a path I couldn't decipher. Here she is, the nurse said gently, a beacon amidst our turmoil. Can I hold her? Please. His voice cracked, trembling as he stepped forward. The nurse looked to me for a cue, and I realized I had occupied a role far greater than the mere rescuer. I had become her guardian, her anchor, but the tide was about to shift. I took a breath, a tapestry of bravery and heartache weaving through me. Somehow, I knew this was not about ownership, but rather a reclamation of love and clarity. I stepped aside, holding back the tempest within and allowing him the space he deserved. Go ahead, I whispered, the weight of my acceptance surrounding us both. His hands reached out, cradling the baby with tender desolation, and my heart wrenched as her tiny form melted into his embrace. The moment hung suspended in time, visceral and raw. He held her as if she were the very fabric of his being, inhaling the scent of the child he believed had been lost forever. I stood beside them, an outsider in the most intimate reunion imaginable, splintered by chaos yet bound by human connection, but as he gazed down at her, joy flooding his face, a sudden flash of recognition sparked in his eyes. She has, his voice faltered, cutting through our tentative peace. She has a birthmark on her ankle. In that instant, reality twisted with the sharpness of fresh betrayal. The world faded as I stepped backward, realization crashing over me, heart breaking all over again. I didn't mean to take her, I stammered, the air thickening around my lungs. I thought I was saving her. But every word fell flat, echoing off the walls of fate and doubt that barred my way. His gaze shifted, disbelief mixing with a tempest of emotions, and the unspooled nature of this reunion left me breathless, teetering over a precipice with nowhere to land. How had a simple rescue led to this heartbreak? More than a child was lost today, and neither of us could reclaim what we simply could not hold. The shadows deepened, engulfing us, and I felt the chill of the unknown wrap around my heart, leaving me suspended in a liminal space where the lines of love and loss blurred, shrouded in uncertainty. What would become of us all in the wake of this delicate, irrevocable truth? The moment stretched, each heartbeat echoing in my ears, drowning out the sterile sounds of the hospital, the beeping machines, the distant murmurs of nurses, the sharp hiss of air through vents. Time felt warped, as if each second became a labyrinth, twisting in on itself, revealing nothing but confusion and dread. The father lowered his gaze to his daughter, the flicker of recognition morphing into something darker. "You thought you were saving her?" he repeated, a choke in his voice. "You took her from us. She was ours, I didn't know," I implored, panic wrapping around me like a vice. She was alone. In danger. I thought I was keeping her safe. Desperation tainted my words, the emotions tangled in my throat like wild vines. The older woman by the door, her presence feeling more formidable now, clasped a comforting hand on my shoulder. It was a gesture meant to steady, but it only served to agitate the swell of emotions bubbling within me. "Let's all take a breath," she interjected softly, but her words felt futile against the tidal wave of conflict. "Take a breath?" He scoffed, barely keeping his voice steady. "You don't know what we've been through. You don't know what it's like to lose everything." I shrank at his accusation, the weight of it crashing down on me like a heavy stone. I had tried to be a protector, a savior, yet every inclination of heroism crumbled before the harshness of reality. Another nurse passed us, momentarily distracting the father as he went to comfort his daughter, who had begun to stir in his arms, her face contorted in confusion, sensing the upheaval around her. "Sweetheart," he murmured, brushing soft fingers along her cheek. "You're okay, you're safe." But in my heart, I felt the creeping horror return. Was she truly safe? As I observed them, the shadows of doubt twisted, and I caught sight of a flickering figure at the periphery of my vision. A man approached, wearing an air of authority, and in an instant, fervor ignited. The sudden arrival of someone I had not anticipated, igniting a new wave of anxiety within me. "Is everything all right here?" he interrupted, assessing the situation quickly, eyes darting between us. I felt his gaze lash against me like a reprimand, as if I stood guilty before a jury of emotions. "Do you know them?" he directed at me, sensing the opacity of my uncertainty. "No," I replied, voice shaky. "But I found her alone." "Found who?" he pressed, and a sickening feeling knotted in my stomach. Had I unleashed a truth that no longer belonged only to me? Her. The father's voice was swift, a protective growl. "You weren't there. You don't understand, actually, that's not." I stammered, but the words caught in my throat. The weight of my decisions hung heavily between us, stretching endlessly as I realized the enormity of what we faced. The man stepped closer. "We need to sort this out. I think you need to come with me." The room tilted as dread spiraled in my stomach. I hadn't come here expecting to be thrust into a courtroom of emotions, and the prospect of being taken away felt like a verdict I didn't deserve. "No. She's not in danger," I insisted, my chest tightening. "I promise. I protected her." But my words fell away, lost in the seriousness of the unfolding scene. The older woman stepped back, concern in her eyes but unable to bridge the chasm growing between us, a bystander to my own undoing. With a last glance at the father, whose face burned with a mixture of raw pain and righteous fury, a new understanding crept into my mind. This wasn't just about reconciliation, it was about the choices we made amid a tempest of fate, choices that echoed far beyond the hospital room. As I prepared to speak again, to advocate for the little girl who felt like a part of my very soul, the nurse returned with a worried expression. "We need to talk to you, too," she said softly but in a tone that carried the weight of authority. "What's happening?" I urged, my heart pounding. But before she could respond, the baby cried, a wail that shattered the fragile air around us like a glass thrown against the wall. The father instinctively turned, attempting to soothe her, the bond of parent and child palpable, and suddenly, the room felt suffocating. I felt a knot of powerlessness grip me tight. My mind raced. What if they decided I had to leave? What if, against a backdrop of misunderstandings, I lost her forever? My thoughts collided, a cacophony of fear and yearning. And then came the unthinkable. The older woman stepped toward the father, the air shifting with her gravitas. What if we could? But her words cut short as another figure entered, this time a woman with a sharp gaze that could slice through tension. "I'm here for the child," she declared with authority, her words ricocheting through us all like bullet points. "What do you mean?" The father looked up, alarm flickering across his face. "There's a situation," she replied, her voice calm and steely. "And we believe she may not be safe with you, either." Those words hung in the air like an ominous storm cloud threatening to unleash chaos once more. The jigsaw of my heart fell into disarray, uncertainty twisting tight, as the shadows deepened around us. What new admissions awaited us all after this revelation? The tension in the air thickened, weighing down on the fragile threads that bound us all, parents, guardian, and the enigmatic specter of authority that had just entered. I could feel my heart hammering in my chest, each pulse echoing with the realization that everything was about to unravel even further. "What do you mean?" The father's voice shattered under its own weight, disbelief clinging to every syllable. The little girl's cries echoed softly, a painful reminder that amidst the turmoil, she was the heart of this storm. The woman stepped forward, her expression resolute as she continued, "We are conducting a welfare check. There are concerns about the circumstances surrounding your custody of the child." My breath caught in my throat as the father recoiled, outrage transforming his features. "You think I would hurt her? That I wouldn't do everything to protect her? You have no idea what we've been through." His anguish sliced through me, a reminder of my own fears. Could I protect the child I had fought so hard to rescue? The uncertainty clung to me like a fog, each heartbeat pregnant with unasked questions. The woman's steely gaze softened momentarily as she glanced toward the little girl, her compassion evident despite the heavy gravity of her words. "I understand it's difficult, but we must ensure she is in the safest environment. We can't take any chances. Do you have any proof?" The older woman, the one who had tried to comfort me moments before, interjected, her voice firm yet gentle like a shield. "You can't just walk in here and accuse a heartbroken father without reason." But the woman remained unyielding, her gaze scanning the room as if searching for answers hidden within our turmoil. "The state has received reports that require us to follow up. I'm sure you can understand." Each word felt like a blow, the implications hanging in the air, rippling outward toward the little girl who remained blissfully unaware, snuggled safely in her father's arms. Yet I could feel the tide shifting, calamity looming just beyond our reach. A nurse lingered at the edge of the chaos, hesitant but alert, as if primed to intervene at the first sign of escalation. I could see her struggle to maintain professionalism, but I felt her heart as strongly as I did my own. In that brief moment, something flickered, a shared understanding of our fragile humanity trapped in a place meant for healing and hope. Driven by instinct, I stepped forward. "Please, listen." My voice trembled as I sought to bridge the emotional chasms. "He loves her. I've seen it. He would never." But my words fell on deaf ears. The authority of the woman's presence loomed as she interrupted me. "Love isn't enough. Love doesn't always shield from danger. There are layers to this we cannot ignore." A collective tension twisted in the air, suffocating. Our glances flitted nervously among each other, those who had become allies and opponents in mere moments. The father withdrew a step, the pain in his eyes morphing into something sharper, a visceral hurt I felt resonate deep within. "Do you think I want this?" He gestured vaguely, trembling hands clenched tight. "After everything I've been through? My family little girl? You think I would endanger her? I would rather die than let anything happen to her." A tense silence collapsed over us, punctuated only by the little girl's whimpers. It carved through the room, a wailing echo of innocent confusion. In her small world, was she safe? Amid such chaos, clarity shimmered like a distant lighthouse beckoning me to the shore. Suddenly, a small voice broke through the tension. "Daddy." The little girl reached out, her tiny hand stretching toward her father, solidifying the emotional shards tattered between us all, laying bare the primal need for connection, the urgency to shield her from lurking shadows. My heart cracked a little more at the sight, recognition dawning. The father knelt, immediately grounding himself, his voice suddenly fierce and soothing. "I'm right here, sweetheart. I won't let anyone take you from me." As he gathered her close, the atmosphere shifted, seemed to hold her like a fragile treasure, the love radiating between them palpable. A momentary silence blanketed us all, giving way to the extraordinary bond that existed in the chaos, yet beneath that surface, dread continued to swirl, twisting my insides into knots as I saw the glimmer of resentment in the eyes of the woman who had entered. "This is just the beginning," she remarked coldly, as if the very fabric of their relationship was now in jeopardy, and with that, my heart thudded with foreboding. What would they decide? How would this continue to unfold? I felt the weight of the impending storm not just around us but within me too, a knot tightening in my chest as a new realization seeped into the fray. One unforgiving truth remained: someone would have to make a choice. The thought was suffocating. And the reality hit me harder than ever as I faced my own emotions. I had stepped into this world to save a life, yet here I was, poised to potentially doom another. The stakes had never felt higher. As I turned to plead my case, desperate for a shred of hope, the last glimpse of the father's anguish stayed etched in my mind, one that would forever haunt me as the battle raged inside and shadows deepened. Something was about to snap, and I was terrified of what that would mean for all of us. The moment stretched like an elastic band, taut with unspoken fears and mounting desperation. As silence settled again, broken only by the soft sobs of the little girl, a deep weight pressed down on my chest. The father remained on his knees, his gaze locked onto the child with an intensity that was almost painful to witness. It was a look of doubting belief, as if her very presence was both a lifeline and a reminder of everything he stood to lose. "Let's discuss this in private," the welfare officer declared, her voice taking on a sterile edge that chilled the air. "I can't make decisions here with witnesses." The father looked up sharply, a mix of anger and bewilderment crossing his features. "You want to separate us? After everything we've gone through?" "Please," I pleaded, moving closer. I felt as if I was stepping into an abyss where my words had little power, yet I had to try. "She just needs to know he's not going anywhere. We all need to see the love, the strength in their bond, not just the headlines." The nurse, who had been standing in the back as an onlooker, shifted her weight slightly, her brow furrowing in thought. "I think maybe an observation period could help." Her voice was soft yet laced with uncertainty. "Just to ensure that this isn't a hurried conclusion." The welfare officer's features hardened as she retorted, "That's not a solution, it only mutates the situation." She was fierce, and it made me chafe against her authority. I could see the little girl reach for her father, her innocent resolve pushing against the tide of adult turmoil. "Please," I breathed, my heart racing. "You can feel it, can't you? The love?" I cast my gaze around the room, searching for allies. "We can't be so quick to strip that away." A ripple of tension passed through the onlookers. It was a fragile connection amidst chaos. Then the older woman who had spoken earlier, nodded supportively at me before turning her eyes on the marker of authority. "What harm would it do to observe? Just a few hours? A day?" "No," the welfare officer said, shaking her head firmly. "We must act now. The child's safety is paramount." The father's voice cut through the tension as he rose, the gravity of his determination unmistakable. "Do what you must. Take me away, but do not take her." The little girl's whimpers grew louder, a staccato wail that twisted deeper into my heart. "Daddy!" she cried, reaching out desperately as if feeling the very fabric of their bond fray. Time seemed to halt, suspended within that moment, and amidst the muted chaos, something unexpected happened. The father released his fragile hold on her. With practiced grace, he shifted her into the arms of a familiar nurse, one who had tended to her fragile needs from the beginning. "It's okay, sweetheart," the nurse whispered as she cradled the frightened child close, her soothing voice enveloping the little girl. "You're safe here." Watching them, I felt an ember of hope flicker amidst the despair. The warmth of love and safety transcended the oppressive atmosphere, making me question if it truly was possible to hold on to both love and duty. Yet, the glimmer of kindness was quickly overshadowed by the sharp inhale from the welfare officer. "This is inappropriate. If you continue to defy the process, I will have no choice but to escalate." "Escalate?" the father echoed, his eyes widening with disbelief. "You don't know what escalation is, woman. You have no idea what it means to fight for your family." Before she could respond, a sudden commotion from outside the room echoed through the hallway, jarring the fragile exhale of our struggle. Conversations turned frantic, muffled voices blending into a clamor. My heart raced as I felt the air shift, anticipation building like a thunderstorm. Through the door burst another figure, a man in a suit, confident and assertive. "Stop!" he declared, halting the cacophony that had begun to overwhelm our sanctuary. "I need to speak to you now." His eyes darted to the welfare officer, and in that brief moment of acknowledgement, an electric current rippled through the room. "Who are you?" she demanded, bewildered, but undeniably shaken. The man pressed forward, his gaze moving over the room before finally resting on the father. "It's about the case. We've uncovered something that might change everything." A wave of anxiety surged through me as I wondered what revelation could possibly emerge from this chaos. The authority in his tone was intoxicating, yet ripe with potential consequences. If what he held could reshape the very foundation of this family's fight, what would the outcome mean? "Change?" the father questioned, hope sparking amidst the despair. The man took a breath, closing his eyes momentarily, gathering strength for what lay ahead. "What I'm about to tell you could either save or destroy you." A gasp echoed in the room. My heart pounded with apprehension, and I felt the fragility of our situation teetering on the edge of an unfathomable cliff. Whatever unfolded next had the potential to be the thread that unraveled all we had endured. The room was thick with a charged silence, every breath tinged with anticipation. The gravity of the stranger's words hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. I could see the father's knuckles whiten as he clenched his hands into fists, the flicker of hope battling against the shadow of fear clouding his expression. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice strained yet steady. The man stepped closer, lowering his voice as if afraid to disturb the delicate balance of emotions swirling around us. "I discovered evidence that might not only redefine your situation but also shed light on the underlying reasons for the accusations against you." The welfare officer's jaw tightened. She realized this was not just any ordinary revelation. "You don't get to dictate the narrative here," she spat, trying to reclaim her lost control. "Actually, I do," he replied, an edge of authority slicing through her bravado. "This evidence changes everything. Please, let me speak." The father's tension morphed into a mixture of desperation and curiosity. "What kind of evidence?" "Documents, witness testimonies," the man replied, eyes locked onto the father's. "There are discrepancies about the situation surrounding your family that were never accounted for in the initial investigation, truths that could turn the tide." At that moment, a flicker of optimism sparked in the depths of my heart, echoing the burning connection between the father and daughter. Yet, as always, hope was a double-edged sword, and I wondered what the costs would be. If darkness loomed behind this potential revelation, it could crush him further. "What kind of discrepancies?" the father pressed, urgency creeping into his tone, clawing at every word spoken. "There were threats made, intimidation tactics aimed to discredit you to keep your family from being whole," the man explained, his voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. "I received an anonymous tip leading me to this information, and time is crucial. We need to act fast lest the powers that be bury this revelation before you can use it. As he spoke, the welfare officer remained unmoved, stubborn and unyielding, her resolve hardening like concrete. "This isn't how this is done. You don't simply reframe a case because of a whim," the nurse continued to cradle the little girl, who squirmed as the tumult played out. "Daddy?" she whimpered, her eyes brimming with confusion and a smattering of fear. "What's happening?" The father instinctively reached for her, his entire demeanor shifting from a lost soul to a beacon of paternal strength. "Sweetheart, everything's going to be all right. I promise." His words flowed soothingly like a lullaby, though the tremor in his voice belied the weight he carried. "Liar." The welfare officer snapped, her patience wearing thin. "You don't even know the implications of what you're asking." The other onlookers remained caught between the explosive confrontation, their faces a tableau of sympathy and shared anxiety. I could see the old woman, her eyes glistening with tears of empathy. She was a testament to the countless battles fought for love. The man in the suit took a step back, sensing the escalation of conflict and the perilous tightrope he was treading. "We can begin to gather evidence, testimonies, and defend your case. This is about your family, not just your reputation." A shift swept through the room, the precarious foundation upon which we all stood beginning to tremble. The father nodded slowly, his gaze becoming a mirror of resolution. "I need you to show me, help me understand what is true," he urged, his voice low but carrying the weight of his conviction. Just when I thought the scene might soften, the welfare officer interjected, her voice dripping with contempt. "You're only making this harder for the child. She doesn't need to see this," she spat, directing her ire at the little girl who sat trembling in the nurse's arms. "Mommy." The little girl interjected suddenly, her tiny fingers gripping the nurse's sleeve. "I need Mommy." At that moment, the air thickened with an indescribable tension, my heart hung in limbo as I witnessed the dread wash over the father like a tidal wave, threatening to consume him. "She's safe, I promise. I'll bring her back to you," he assured the little girl, desperation coloring his words. His determination was palpable, but in the background, I could see the flash of uncertainty in the man's eyes, as if he too understood the stakes at play. But before we could process what was happening, a sudden crash echoed from within the hall, a loud, unmistakable sound that shattered the moment. The door burst inward, flinging wide open as two uniformed officers strode in, their presence suddenly enforcing the fractures between us. "What's going on here?" one officer barked, surveying the room, swiftly assessing the emotions running rampant. And just like that, our fragile thread of hope hanging precariously above despair teetered on a knife's edge. In an instant, the reality of intervention loomed heavy upon us. The man in the suit faltered but quickly regained his composure, his voice resolute. "I need to speak to this family as a matter of urgency." The officers exchanged annoyed glances, their authority radiating throughout the room, but the weight of the father's pleading eyes pierced through them. "Please, there's something you need to hear," he called out desperately, the raw emotion ripping from his throat, stirring something deep within me. Yet as the words hung suspended in time, I felt the ground beneath us shift. The reality ahead was murky and muddled, a labyrinth of emotions and conflicting truths where salvation was entwined with tragedy. And as another heartbeat passed, I realized our story was just beginning to unfold, and with it, the burdens and choices that threatened to change the course of our lives forever were slowly unraveled. The air was thick with uncertainty as the officers moved in closer, their scrutinizing glares falling on the family, each face reflecting the weight of the impending confrontation. The little girl, still in the nurse's arms, clung tightly, her small frame quaking with fright as if sensing the very tension crackling around her. "Identify yourselves," one officer barked, stepping into the fray. There was a commanding authority in his voice, the kind that quelled chaos, but here, chaos was too far entrenched to be quelled. "I am," the man in the suit stammered, struggling to maintain focus under the scrutiny. "I have information regarding this family's case that you need to hear." "Information, huh?" the other officer scoffed, crossing his arms as he exchanged a glance with his partner. "And just what kind of information do you think is worth the risk of barging into a clearly sensitive situation? It could mean the difference between this little girl going home or being lost under your watch." The man inflected urgency into his words, the conviction rising like a flame. "There are discrepancies, potential evidence of wrongful accusation and intimidation against this family. the father shifted uneasily, uncertainty flickering across his features as the emotional turmoil of his past collided with a hate-fueled present. He stepped forward, his heart emblazoned with determination. "I wasn't trying to run from anything. I need you to see that." The welfare officer turned sharply, her skeptical gaze narrowing like a serpent's before a strike. "This isn't a courtroom drama. We're here to ensure the safety of the child," she spat, her voice a blend of condescension and contempt. "Safety?" The father echoed, his voice tinged with bitterness. "Isn't it her safety that depends on being with her family?" In the midst of this battle of wills, I found myself drawn to the little girl's wide, tear-filled eyes. They were mirrors of hope mingled with fear that tugged at my heartstrings. If only she could understand how much she mattered, how each adult's quarreling felt like the earth shifting under her tiny feet. The nurse gently stroked the girl's hair, whispering reassurances, trying her best to preserve a sense of comfort amid rising tensions. An older gentleman in the corner, pushed to the periphery, suddenly spoke up. "Just a moment," he called, his voice reverberating with the calm of years lived. "Isn't it worth hearing him out?" Head turned, eyes narrowed in disbelief. The welfare officer's gaze hardened even more, while the officers exchanged dubious looks. "And you are someone who's seen families torn apart by policies that forget the human soul," the man replied, his voice wearily resolute. "You might want to listen before you banish a father from his child." The unexpected moment of peer pressure fractured the foundation of authority, if just for a heartbeat, but tension quickly returned. "We need to clear these allegations," one officer reiterated, raising his brow. "You say discrepancies, where's your proof?" Just as the urgency peaked, the little girl's voice cut through the air thin as gossamer. "I want Daddy," she declared, cherubic lips trembling but words resolute, effectuating a wave of silence that rendered the adult squabbles momentarily moot. The father's face softened, a tear escaping down his cheek, glistening in the harsh fluorescent lights like a dripping candle reflecting hope. "I'm here, sweetie. I'm here no matter what." My heart ached at the sight, as a collective strain of feeling tightened in the space between us. Unexamined emotions surged. It felt dark and primal, yet intricately woven with flicks of fragile human compassion. In the crowd, an anonymous figure straightened, an elderly woman who had witnessed countless battles across the years spoke softly. "Maybe we are all just trying to protect our own, but we can't do that if we don't listen." The warmth of solidarity was almost palpable, rippling through the onlookers as the old woman stepped forward. "Sometimes it takes someone brave to challenge the tide," her words ignited a whisper of hope that infused everyone present, a reminder of our shared humanity amidst the chaos. The officers began to look less like guardians of law and more like confused participants in a drama they weren't prepared for. "Maybe this can be discussed somewhere less volatile," one finally relented, the knot of unwavering authority loosening just ever so slightly. "Let's step outside." As they shifted, the father maintained his aggrieved gaze on the welfare officer. "You have no idea how it feels to be deemed an enemy of your own family," he said, each syllable a fistful of anger and sorrow. With a jolt, the little girl leaned slightly away from the nurse. "I don't want to move. I want my home." Her voice, a hesitant wail, splintered the air, a reflection of all the innocence that had been compromised. Before any of us could digest the gravity of the moment, a sudden commotion erupted outside the building, a shriek of sirens, a cacophony that interrupted our frail thread of intersecting emotions. The realization that lives beyond this room were embroiled in turmoil descended like a dark cloud. As the officers turned to investigate, the father locked eyes with the man in the suit, his expression wrought with fierce intensity, a silent pact forged between them, hope suspended in ambiguity. In that moment, it felt as if every heartbeat echoed their vulnerability, a reminder that each choice could lead them deeper into light or further into shadow. The sound of footsteps echoed back as shadows danced on the walls, leading to an immediate realization that an unexpected figure had arrived at the door. The tension thickened, heavy like electricity before a storm, as memories I once thought buried flashed in my mind like paused frames of lost moments, and then a voice sliced through the air, resonating like shattered glass. "I know who's behind the threats," they declared flatly, sending a surge of dread through everyone present. altering the course of our narrative in a way none of us could have anticipated. The arrival of the newcomer created an almost instantaneous crack in the atmosphere, charged with anticipation and dread. Every face in the room twisted toward the door, where a figure stood, silhouetted against the harsh fluorescent lights. The flickering shadows played tricks on my mind, conjuring emotions I thought had simplified into understanding. I recognized her, a woman I had once believed lost in the mists of memories. "I know who's behind the threats," she stated again, her voice steady yet suffused with a tremor of vulnerability. The father's eyes widened in disbelief, emotions flaring like wildfire. "You?" he managed, stepping forward, a myriad of questions layering in the depths of his gaze. "You're back after all this time. What could you possibly know?" The woman took a deep breath, defiance rising to meet the storm of judgment swirling around her. "I heard things nobody else seemed to have noticed," she replied, forging her way into the heart of the room. "I couldn't just stand by anymore. The threats you've been receiving, they are worse than you realize." The officers shifted uncomfortably, their professional masks slipping as the revelation unfurled. "This is not the place for whatever this is," one of them interjected, clearly struggling to maintain control over the fracturing situation. "That I get that this is complicated," she continued, ignoring the interruption. "But this family is at stake. We cannot let them become casualties in a game that's much larger than any of us." As her words sank in, I could see the faces in the crowd transforming, their initial hostility melting into uncertainty. The implication of the woman's involvement, of her knowledge, framed the reality with a harsh light, illuminating fears that had been lurking just beneath the surface. "What do you mean?" the welfare officer challenged, skepticism entwined with an uneasiness that permeated her posture. "Evidence," the woman replied, glancing towards the little girl, still clasping the nurse's hands inside a cocoon of innocence. "I have proof that the allegations against this father were fabricated. Someone wants to break this family apart for their own gain. The very people charged with protecting this child are potentially endangering her more than they can imagine." The echoes of her words reverberated in the small space, sending chills down my spine. Each sentence added more weight to the burden that had already been laid on the father's shoulders, igniting flickers of hope mixed with a tsunami of fear. If the allegations were indeed unfounded, what threads of darkness were pulling on this family from the shadows? The little girl's lip quivered as the aura of tension enveloped her, twisting her childlike innocence into a maze of confusion. "I want to go home, please," she whispered, her voice barely audible yet edged with deep desperation. The father's expression twisted into a mask of anguish. "I know, sweetheart. I promise I will bring you home." But as he uttered those words, a harrowing sense of doubt seeped into his voice, a father torn between assurance and the very real possibility of futility. "What proof?" one officer demanded, attempting to regain a semblance of control. But between the splayed faces, I could feel the fraying of their power. "Every line they had drawn was now blurring with uncertainty." "That I have recordings," she stated, holding her phone delicately, as if it were a fragile bird. "Messages from a voice you'll recognize, and discussions that shed light on who's really pulling the strings." And with that dark disclosure, a new tension settled in the room, a thick silence that pulsed with the dread of revelations yet to come. It was a calculated escalation, one that thrust everyone deep into the fray without escape. "Are you really going to listen to this?" the welfare officer spat, disbelief morphing into outright fury. "She's just trying to deflect blame," but in a moment of reckless abandon, the father took a step forward. "No. If there's even a sliver of truth in her words, then we owe it to our daughter to find out. You owe it to her." His voice rose above the swirling tempest, creating a spotlight of raw emotion illuminating the path just ahead. The air held its breath as eyes shifted toward the woman, awaiting the reveal with bated anticipation. It was a fragile certainty hanging by a thread, as if the very fabric of their lives was on the cusp of falling apart. And then, the ringing brought life back to the room, an unexpected sound warning against the silence. The father's phone vibrated in his pocket, trembling against the weight of dread he already carried. He fished it out, his expression morphing from confusion to horror as he read the message. "We need to talk. You're in danger." You have 48 hours. The world pivoted on the axis of his anguish, and within seconds, the collective tension shattered into jagged shards of despair. What have you done? He whispered, as fear washed over him, a wave sweeping painfully through every heart in the room. The air thickened, tenebrous with the testimony of that dark message hanging heavy overhead like a guillotine waiting for the fall. In that moment, clarity swept over me. This was no longer a debate, nor a family battle. It was a race against time, an impending storm that threatened to swallow them whole if they didn't move swiftly. The haunting echoes of their plight resonated deep within me, as time slipped away like sand through fractured fingers, leaving behind only the raw urgency of a desperate quest for truth. Because as much as hope flickered between them, the shadows loomed darker, and I suspected that truth, once revealed, might still carve deeper wounds than any lie ever could. The storm outside mirrored the tempest within me as I stood in the hospital room, caught amid a swirling conflict of emotions that clawed at my heart. Fear hung thick in the air, a tangible fog enveloping everyone present. We were all tethered by our desperation, some seeking the truth, others hoping to shield what was left of love. The father's hands trembled against his daughter, and even the little girl sensed the tension, her innocent brow furrowed as she clung to the nurse, who tightened her grip slightly as a muted act of reassurance. Time had begun to warp, each second stretching thin, palpable with the weight of uncertainty looming like a tempest. Alongside the familiar heaviness of dread, a warm ember of determination stirred somewhere deep within my chest. As I glanced at the father, I saw not just a desperate man but a fierce protector. He bore the deep lines of loss, but the flames of love danced in his eyes. "No!" he shouted suddenly, disbelief morphing into resolve. "I will not let anyone tear us apart again. She deserves better." His voice rang fiercely, echoing off the sterile walls of the room, and within that proclamation, I felt a surge of courage bubble up, urging me to join him in this fight. But what could I offer? I had been merely an accidental savior, thrust into a drama orchestrated by forces I couldn't comprehend. Yet something primal tugged at the edges of my soul, an inexplicable connection to this little girl who had slowly and quietly woven herself into the fabric of my heart. "No one is taking her from you," I spoke, my voice steady despite the uncertainties swirling. "You deserve to know the truth, and so does she." The welfare officer shot me a glare, but I pushed forward, fueled by an instinct I couldn't shake. "We need to listen to her," I gestured toward the woman who had revealed herself. "If we're truly concerned about this child's safety, then we cannot ignore potential threats lurking just beyond our sight." The eyes in the room shifted, doubt mingling with curiosity. "But this isn't how this works. This isn't a game," the welfare officer pressed, but the tremor of uncertainty in her voice betrayed her. Amidst the turbulence, the man in the suit took charge, his voice cutting through the clamor. "I believe this family deserves a chance to defend themselves, especially considering the accusations flung at them. If we allow fear to cloud our vision, we could be dooming an innocent child to a life missing the love she deserves. What do we stand to lose by listening?" Even as my heart soared with tentative hope, I couldn't help but wonder if we were inviting a deeper shadow into the light. The stakes had become unbearably high. Lives danced precariously on a razor's edge. Everything shifted as the woman nodded, her determination galvanizing her words. "The threats against your family are orchestrated. I can present the evidence that not only reveals who's behind this but clarifies how their intentions are aimed at displacing and breaking you apart. Why should we believe you?" the welfare officer demanded, crossing her arms tightly. "There are always ulterior motives in situations like these. Because I was once on the brink of losing my own family," her voice cracked almost imperceptibly. "And I've seen things that can't simply be swept under the rug. I had to live with the repercussions long after the storm passed." With the weight of every word hovering like an omen, the room held its collective breath. The father curled his hands into fists, determination flashing in his eyes. "You're telling me that what I've feared isn't just paranoia? That I didn't imagine it all?" "No. It's real," she stated firmly, scanning the faces around her. "But together, we can transform this nightmare into a chance for healing. However, we have to act now." Time resumed its relentless march as she reached into her bag, pulling out a small device. It pulsed with potential. These recordings, she began, pausing for a moment as if weighing the gravity of what was about to unfold. This is proof of not only the threats but the undercurrent that has been sabotaging your family's safety. The room was silent, save for the ticking clock on the wall, heavy with the burden of anticipation. The little girl squeezed the nurse, fidgeting in confusion but perceptive enough to note the rising emotions. "I want to go home," she whispered again, each word wrapping around my heart like a lifeline. Sensing the fragile balance of emotions like a conductor of an orchestra, I pressed forward. We owe it to her to uncover the truth. With that, the tension was released just a fraction, the parents' fear coiling into a knot of raw determination. The father looked at the woman, newly illuminated by the dim light of hope. "All right, let's hear it," he urged, his voice steadier than before. "If you believe it could change everything, then I owe it to my daughter to listen." As the recordings played, the air shifted, voices from the past surfacing like long-forgotten specters, revealing shadows that had tormented this family. Each word articulated the raw depths of malice that had seeped into their lives, and the urgency began to bloom in tandem with resolution. With each revelation, the father's expression shifted from disbelief to incredulous pain. "I never wanted to believe this," he rasped, fingers tightening protectively around the little girl, whose once silent wails echoed louder in the recesses of my heart. But something shifted in me as I stood among these people, commissioned to listen and speak. Guilt wove tightly around my heart, but the threads of resolve began to illuminate the path forward. In that moment, clarity dawned as I connected the dots of both vulnerability and tenacity. Through all the fear and pain, we must remember that love is worth fighting for. I spoke, my voice steady with conviction. "This child deserves a chance to know her family, to thrive in it, not be thrust into dark uncertainties." The father looked towards me, his eyes glimmering with a mixture of gratitude and pain. "You didn't have to join this fight," he stated softly, as if the weight of that acknowledgement could cradle so much more than just words shared amidst fear. "Maybe I'm still learning how to step into the light amid the shadows," I admitted, "but I know what family means. And in that understanding, I see you." The last piece of the puzzle fell into place. Love doesn't always mean keeping someone close. Sometimes, it means letting them go back to whence they truly belong. In that moment, everything collided. The weight of sacrifices made, the shadows lifted, the love fought for, and the storm outside began to wane. "Together," I whispered softly, daring to believe. And from that wisp of hope, the storm inside began to ease, illuminating the path to redemption and healing. For in learning to let go, we might just find our way back home. In that instant, I understood life was never about the endings or the beginnings, but the moments shared in between. With every heartbeat, a new story began. "Let's go home," I said finally, revealing a smile that filled the room like the first rays of dawn breaking the night. And as we stepped into the light together, I felt a constellation of threads bind our hearts, stronger woven by all the battles endured. It was then I finally understood, love would always find a way back.